partner, my colleague, Dr. Julius Su for the keynote.
Let me unmute myself. Hi, everyone. So happy to see everyone today. This is really special to be here for the second year, second annual SKYS conference. We hope to see all you all back for the third year. So yeah, today we're going to be talking about some experiments we did with remote teaching this summer, now that it seems to be even more and more topical. And of course, the goal is to make it as effective as regular in-person teaching. And so we're going to be talking about sort of not just the why, but the how, the details of how remote pedagogy can be really effective. So of course, last March, you all remember, everyone had a weekend to go fully remote. It was Friday afternoon. The announcement was made Monday morning. Everyone was supposed to be back online. SKYS users, you did great. I think within 3 days, our usage was back to 100%. Everyone was online, everyone was with their students. So that was an amazing accomplishment. Nonetheless, people, by the time the summer started, people were generally kind of unhappy, particularly parents. I believe in this article, they said, most of us are resigned to go back to the hell of online learning because the only alternative our leaders have left us with is even worse. That's a pretty striking quote. And of course, I don't have to belabor what the worst alternative is, just that it's pretty bad. So for example, people are so unhappy about, the state of online learning in March, which was an emergency thing. Parents are risking their kids' lives to put them in these pandemic pods. Oh, okay, promise no one's gonna see anyone else but you guys. Let's all homeschool together, hire a tutor and do something like that. Also, there's been a lot of pressure to open up schools, even when it's not really safe to do so. And there's some fun videos about what this might look like.
So the school district in my town just released a video of what to expect for the upcoming school year.
This was on TikTok.
Lie, it looks a little apocalyptic-y, a little Hunger Games-y.
As they return to schools for the 2020-2021 school year, the reopening plan represents the hard work of parents. Distancing will be adhered to in all shared spaces and cafeterias. Every effort will be made. Rings are required to be. Temperatures may be taken as they board the bus and enter school. Will be part of the day. Meals will be prepackaged to limit exposure. Social distancing. Outdoor seating will.
So this clearly isn't an ideal situation. But the only reason, aside from the whole childcare and parents needing to go back to work thing, one big reason why these things are getting such a big push is just this idea that in-class learning is the best, is awesome, there's no substitute. If in-class learning is a 3-course meal, then remote learning is probably something like this, right? I'll play the hot Cheetos, that's it. It's just not considered to be the same level. But let me pose a question to you guys. What if we could make remote learning as good as in-person learning? Now, it's not going to be the same as in-person learning. We're not going to have all the social connections. You're not going to have all the PE, the art. You're not going to have a lot of the things you get when you're all in the same room together. But what if it can be just as effective as advancing kids academically? What if we could work towards this goal together?
And Julius, just 1 second.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Julius.
Well, then there could be a lot of good things, right? Parents would no longer feel the need to pull their kids out of the system and put them in these pandemic pods. And school leaders would no longer feel like they have to get everyone back into school before it's perfectly safe to do so. If remote learning was a robust, viable option that was working really well, we could stick with it for longer, which would be great for everyone's safety. So that's our motivation. That's why we're trying so hard to make remote learning work well. Even our governor, our California governor, put this on his tweet. Apparently, this is how government announcements are made these days, by tweet. So of course, everyone's going to get a device. The state got $1 billion in CARES Act funding to do this. There's going to be daily live interaction. That's absolutely required this year for all teachers. Everyone has to interact daily live with their students. But then the third item here is really interesting. It's supposed to be challenging and equivalent to in-person instruction. That's a tall order, but it's from the governor himself. And of course, we don't want to forget about English learners and special education, which many of you guys are in public school, LUSD, Title I, you know how important those things are. Those shouldn't just be forgotten this year. That's super critical. And we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. So the first thing I want to start with is very topical. It's this debate over live instructional minutes. I think as we speak, LAUSD and UTLA are still hashing out this idea of how many minutes in the school day should be live instructional. And so I'll present to you guys the latest news from the bargaining team. As you know, in California, they reduced the number of in-person instructional minutes required this year. So I think kinder's 180, grade 1 through 3 is 230, and everyone else is 240. 4 hours of instruction for in-person school. Because people were so upset with the state of remote learning in March, the legislature also passed a bill called AB 77, which requires that if they're doing distance learning instead of in-person classes, it's got to be daily live interaction for the purposes of instruction, progress monitoring, and maintaining school connectedness. So this is absolutely required now. What's left unspecified though is how many of these instructional minutes are going to be synchronous versus asynchronous. And so this is the open question. How do you distribute the minutes in a day? So let me review the difference. And this is just going on the MOU that UTLA published. Synchronous learning, synchronous instruction is just what teachers do every day. They lecture, they answer questions, they give explanations. If a student posts something, they give feedback right away. It's really the experience of being in the classroom together in the same physical space, interactive back and forth. A student says something, you can say something back instantaneously. It's this back and forth. And I want to point out that if you're doing synchronous distance teaching, it feels like regular teaching. The effort required, the mental, going back and forth, dividing your attention between 20 students, it's pretty much the same. As a result, you can't really do synchronous learning with more than like 20 students or 25 students or at most 30. Like the limit isn't like bandwidth, the limit is just your attention as a teacher, how you divide it among students. And so you're never going to be able to say, hey, one teacher is going to synchronously teach 100 students. It's not going to work. It's not going to happen. But because of this focused synchronous attention, it works. I mean, kids can complete things. You can give encouragement. You can give feedback. It really can work well for K through 12. The other possible way of doing distance learning is called asynchronous or self-guided. And this is really interesting to us that it's being considered for use in K-12 because previously it's really been emphasized for content delivery in higher education, college students, or maybe Khan Academy. This is more students who are very self-directed, who you can give them a web page or a textbook and say, go learn for a few hours, and a few hours later they come back and they've learned something. Here's the problem with asynchronous learning in general, especially for K through 12. Your students have to be really motivated to learn on their own. And because it requires such self-directed students, these courses tend to have really low completion rates. In fact, it sort of gets a bad rap in higher ed. If you've ever taken a master's, gotten a master's degree or a doctorate degree or something online, if your professor's like, oh, we're going to do it online this term, you're not like, yay, that's great, online. You're like, oh, they're just going to have us do a ton of papers offline. This is going to be such a pain. And it's often, professors don't like it either because they usually use the costs. They're like, okay, we're going to have one of you teach 100 or 200 students. It's okay, it's asynchronous. So no one seriously believes that this is a good solution for K through 12. I'm just going to put that out there. So what are the current proposals, all that being said, on the table? Well, this is the UTLA proposal as of last Friday. They're proposing that for TK and K, you split evenly between synchronous and asynchronous. And then for all the other grade levels, 1 through 6 for elementary, they're recommending 90 minutes of synchronous instruction a day, and the rest all asynchronous. For middle school and high school, they're recommending 48 minutes of synchronous instruction per day. That means one class period per week, per whatever, is synchronous. The other 4 days are asynchronous. So it's like Monday, you meet all your students sort of on Zoom, and all the rest of the day they're on their own, you know, doing the work we hope that they're going to do during the week. This is what a schedule might look like according to sort of UTLA recommendations. They might say, okay, the first hour of the day is synchronous, an inclusion activity, like, you know, our little introduction thing, maybe 40 minutes of core instruction. The bulk of the day, the students are on their own, doing worksheets, doing whatever. And then you come back at the end of the day for 30 minutes to give some tiered support. And hopefully, in the 3 hours or whatever that the students were on their own, they'll have done some work that you can then give support on. So our thought coming into the summer was, why can't we just have all day synchronous instruction? Why even have this middle block where we're asking students to just work on their own? What if the teacher was just there like regular school day, encouraging, motivating, you know, being there to answer questions? What if it was just like regular school? What if we could just do synchronous all day? And so here's, of course, there would be benefits, right? If you could do synchronous all day, you learn better, smaller achievement gap. It would also take so much stress off the parents, right? If parents are staying at home watching their kids, if the kids were actually being engaged with a teacher and their classmates and socializing all day, then the parents could go back to work. They could go work on their own stuff. They wouldn't have to be watching their kids all the time. The kids' attention would be focused on class. And even if parents are not able to, you know, be there at home, if they're essential workers, they got to work at a hospital, grocery store, police station, or whatever, students could still be supervised at the daycare center or even in school campuses. And the supervision would be so much easier if their attention was occupied with synchronous instruction rather than go do something on your own for a few hours. So we viewed this as sort of an imperative. We got to figure out a way to make this work. But of course, there are objections. Most people, if you say, okay, can we do synchronous instruction all day, are going to go, oh, that's like having a 6-hour Zoom meeting. I don't know if anyone would be up for that, especially not little kids. There's a lot of concerns over screen time. There's like, is that even educationally effective? Can you learn that way? Can you do instruction for a long time via Zoom? Will that even work? So it falls into the category of like unicorns and like butterflies. Well, wait, butterflies are real. Unicorns, like nice in theory, but will it actually work in practice? Is this even possible? So let me address these points one at a time. The first is the issue of screen time. Parents, everyone is like, oh, screen time is bad. You know, you can't just put kids in front of a screen for hours. It'll like, their brains will go from here to like the size of like a peanut or something. That's bad. You know, screen time will kill kids. I want to point out that the research on this is pretty clear. Screen time is not a universally bad thing. It 100% depends on what's on the screen. Okay? They did this huge survey of all these British students, and they found like, okay, after a certain amount of screen time, you know, well-being starts to decrease, but it 100% depends on what they're doing on the screen. Yes, if they're doing computer games all day, if they're playing Fortnite all day, there's going to be a problem. After 2 hours of video game playing, that's too much. But if they're just doing like Google Docs, writing things, 4 hours a day is absolutely fine. And we predict that if they're learning all day, if they're actually creating content, if they're actually doing worksheets and things like that, if they're engaging with the class, it's just going to be like regular school. I think the fear of screen time is overblown because it 100% depends on what's on the screen. So the other points, whether it can work and whether it's educationally effective, there was only one way for us to find out, and that was for us to try it ourselves. So what do educational technologists do during the summer? What does a regular ed tech company do? You might imagine like, you know, we might be like improving our product. It's true, we do a little bit of that, but not that much. We might be making sales. We might be trying to sign those big contracts. We do a little bit of that, but not that much. You know, we might be going to like seminars and giving conferences. We do that, but really not that much. We do one main thing over the summer, and this has been a tradition since the beginning. We all teach summer school. That's what James and I and teacher helpers have done. 6 weeks, everyone in the company just takes a break from doing Sky stuff, and we just teach summer school. We get to use the software ourselves, and there's nothing like getting the feeling of like, how does it work, to help us improve everything in the long run for later. And so this summer we wanted to do a research project. Can this actually be effective? Of course, we didn't want to go blind. We got a lot of advice from teachers, particularly our partners at San Pasquale Steam Magnet. And we didn't go to them saying, okay, you guys ought to do this. We thought, okay, we're going to do it this summer. We ourselves, we're not going to make it. We're going to be doing it. Can you give us some advice? And it's amazing. In 15 minutes, I think we had like their 15 teachers try to condense all their decades of educational experience into like, okay, please make sure you do this. If you want to engage like a whole bunch of like young kids for the whole day, here's what you need to do. The most important things we remembered was they need plenty of breaks. Otherwise, I believe the technical educational term is they get squirrely. They need to get their wiggles out sometimes, so they need to have some fun things to do. And then there was also a long discussion about breakout rooms. Like they need breakout rooms, they need to do group work, but like you need to supervise them in their breakout rooms that are just gonna like goof off. So how are you gonna do breakout rooms? I don't know, but you guys have to gotta figure out the breakout room situation. And so we experimented with a lot of things this summer, and we figured out what works and what does not. Okay, so here's our summer program. We had a website. We put together a website. We put a lot of Facebook ads up. Keep your kids safe and busy with more instruction. We had pictures of all the kids that we knew. We had pictures of James's son. We had like weekly topics. We put together a nice little web page. And we advertised it to students from all over. A lot of students from LAUSD, from Pasadena, from all over the country. We advertised it. We ended up admitting 58 students from grades 2 through 5. And unlike previous programs we ran at Caltech and things like that, we had no selection process. We wanted to make sure that it was as representative of a group of students as we could possibly find. We didn't want to be accused of handpicking, like, oh, you're only going to teach good students. Anyone who applied, we accepted like immediately. We also charged tuition. We said it would be $1,500 for 6 weeks. But then the negotiation process, the sales process went as follows. Parent would call James. James would say like, okay, tuition costs this much. I think we had one parent just hang up immediately. But everyone else was like, either, oh, for 6 weeks, that's very reasonable. Okay, I'll give you my credit card number right away. To like, yeah, we can't do that. That's like really high. We just lost our job. We can't do that. We're on welfare, that sort of thing. So the next question James would always ask was, okay, what do you feel you can pay? And then they would offer a number. And then James would say, okay, that's what you're paying. And so that's how we did it. Everyone paid a different amount. It was pay what you get. And we actually made a small profit at the end, which was good. But more importantly, we got a class that was very diverse. Racially, it was about 1/4 African-American, 1/4 Asian, 1/4 Caucasian, 1/4 Hispanic. If you took all the public schools in the country and just integrated them, like, oh, it would be so great if we could just integrate schools, right? It would be so great. We did that. We had a fully integrated class. It was wonderful. And it's socio-economically diverse as well. We had everyone from like parents going, oh, okay, can I introduce you to other CEOs who need their kids taught this summer? We're like, Cupertino, yes, please. The parents who were like, oh, can I pay weekly? My welfare check comes in every week, and I'm going to pay you $100 a week if that's okay. So I just pay you $100 a week. And we said okay. So it was very diverse. We had a good range of students. We ended up with 3 classes, 2-3 combos and 1-4-5 combo, each about 20 students. And we had the luxurious situation of 2 instructors per class. Although the way we ran it, we could have just as easily done 1 teacher and 1 TA. It doesn't need to be 2 teachers. So James and Melanie took the 1-2-3s, Jasmine and Monica took another 2-3, and myself and Min, who introduced himself earlier, we took the 4-5 combo. All the lessons we made for 4-5, but then with 1 day notice, we accommodated them down. We made them simpler for 2-3 as well. So we were able to use substantially the same content but done at a simpler level for 2-3. But for that reason, I'm mainly going to present 4 or 5 results, although it worked very well for 2-3 as well. Okay. We did 18 classes. It was Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 6 weeks. You might ask, why didn't you just do class every day? And the answer was, well, we were making the lessons every day. we needed time to plan. We didn't have the curriculum all made ahead of time. So we needed the days to like actually plan in between. I know you guys don't have that. So we appreciate how difficult your lives are as regular teachers. You don't get like every other day off to plan. But we felt like we needed it, so we did it. And we recorded like half of our sessions. Toward the middle of the thing, we were like, wow, this thing's kind of working. How are we going to convince other people that this can work? And the close colleague was like, oh, you should just record yourselves. And we're like, record ourselves? And they're like, yeah, just record all your classes. So our last 7 classes times 3, we have 21 full day recordings on Zoom of everything. I don't think anyone's gotten data like this before, but we have it. And we got all the permissions signed and everything. We use Skies plus Zoom for everything. We didn't want to just teach enrichment. I know a lot of summer programs is going to be like, oh, here's how to build a rocket. Here's how to play around with, you know, Minecraft or Pokemons or whatever. You know, that's education for the summer. And that's awesome. But we wanted to show that you could do like math and science and history and ELA. So we made sure it was a rigorous, non-enrichment, fully core subject curriculum. We had a lot of knowledge. We had a lot of class discussion. We had a lot of emphasis on skill building. And we ended up doing 285 instructional minutes a day. 285 instructional minutes, 4.5 hours of live instruction per day. Here's what the schedule looked like. We pretty much thought it would be 3 blocks, 90-minute block in the morning for math, 90-minute block after recess for intervention, 90-minute block after lunch for ELA, which was a combination of science, history, and writing. That's at least what we started with. But then we remembered those San Pasquale teachers saying, yeah, kids get squirrely. So we decided we needed more breaks. So this is what it really ended up looking like. We had 15 minutes in the beginning for show and tell. And this is very important because students will always log on late. And so we played a trick on them like we did with you guys. We told them class started at 8:15, but class really started at 8:30, just to make sure everyone was logged in by the time we started like academic instruction. We had math for 40 minutes, took a break, math for another 40 minutes, then took a recess break. Turns out intervention, kids don't like doing intervention for 90 minutes. They get squirrely. So we had intervention for 40 minutes, then another 10-minute break. And then we had 2 content blocks, 2 knowledge blocks, just like really cool science and history stuff. 40 minutes for that. Then another 40 minutes for more science and history. And then the last block for 40 minutes, all ELA, all writing, all time to practice that. That way they got there when their minds were most sharp. They got all the hard math out of the way, and then they were able to do. Anyway, this schedule worked really, really well for us. So we highly recommend it if you guys want to try all-day synchronous instruction.
And the ELA is from 1:50 to 2:30.
Sorry, that was a mistake. 1:50 to 2:30. Yeah, we don't just do 10 minutes of writing. That would be impressive if they were able to get that. Okay, so you guys might be curious. Yeah. Do your students really stay still for 4.5 hours? Like, we don't believe you. So we did a time-lapse video to show you guys. There are some periods students disappear, and that's because we're taking them out into breakout rooms for reasons we'll explain later to do our interventions, our RTI. So it's 9 o'clock. Everyone's participating. They don't look tired. They look happy. They're engaged. They're learning. It's like regular school for them. You can see a parent coming in once in a while to help with some math, but we don't require that. Parents are usually gone. They're usually not there.
This is their break. They're coming back
Some
from
computer
break.
game playing during break. We don't recommend it, but we tolerate it. After recess, they come back. They're doing intervention. Now they're starting to learn about, I think, I think they're learning about strikes now. So the stuffed bee comes out. They're asking a lot of questions, having a lot of good discussion. Okay, 10 minutes to lunch. Okay, boom, lunch hits. Some kids stay around, play video games, just want to stay connected. Oh, back from lunch. Okay, learn more about Cesar Chavez. Everyone's happy, take a break. Okay, ELA time, right. They're writing like crazy now. Writing for 40 minutes. And this was Friday, okay? Friday at 2:30. Everyone's still engaged, everyone's still learning. We've heard of these things like kids can't learn at 2:30 on a Friday. They absolutely can. And we have the videos to show it. We have the receipts. So that was that. Okay, let's go on to the next one. So math was algebra. You know, we know there's not going to be any testing this year. There's not any evaluations. There's not any observations. So everyone's pretty much can teach whatever they want. And we felt like, along the spirit of that, what if we just got our kids so good at algebra that when they got to middle or high school, they would nail it? Because really, when they get to high school, half of all kids fail algebra. It's kind of a shame. And our theory is that they just need to learn it earlier, because math is a language. And if you pick up a language in elementary school, you're going to have it for the rest of your life. Once you get to middle school, high school, your brain kind of solidifies. It becomes hard to learn a new language. So we thought, why not just teach them algebra and just see how it goes and see how far we can get them, elementary school. Why not just do something challenging? So we did that. So let me pull over to my iPad now. Hopefully I've turned all my notifications off. And so yeah, I think on the Friday that we recorded this, we were doing factoring. We were talking about how to factor expressions, how to factor things out, look for common things, common multiples, pull them out. 4th and 5th graders. Also the 2nd and 3rd graders got to do this. They can do it, no problem. We do a my turn. We use annotation. If you guys have an iPad, you can do annotation. And we also used cold calling as a strategy. So cold calling. Let me point out, there's a really good website called Wheel Decide. We're eventually just going to build this in disguise. But it lets you like spin a wheel and cold call on your students. It's like those popsicle sticks, only electronic. And so we made a lot of use of this to keep kids on their toes and engaged. So yeah, we would do something like, okay, we'd be showing them how to do things. We'd be like, okay, what are the common numbers here? And then we need to pull it out in accordance with distributive principle. And then what's left over? +7. And then I might go ahead and do the wheel and go like, oh, okay. Blade, what would you do next? What would you do for the next problem? And then, I would go back and then Blade would tell me, oh, you would pull out the 5. And then you would be left with Blade, or you would left with 3 + 2. And then what else? 9 × 1. And then we go on, we cold call. We make sure that the students are, understanding as we go along. So we have that my turn. This is the first 40 minutes. Then we do a your turn, where now they get to solve a bunch of questions. And as they do it, we grade them. So we pull up all of the responses, and these come in, and as they come in, we're assigning grades from a 0 to a 4. We like to joke that we grade on a 2 to 4 scale. If it's perfect, we give a 4. If there's anything substantially wrong, we just give it a 2. We realize that when we give students a 3, they just go, oh, that's good enough. And then they don't revise their answer. So we just give it a 2. If it's a really minor mistake, we give it a 3. And if it's atrociously wrong, we give it a 1. And if they just don't answer, we give it a 0. That's a rubric. It's the same every time. Simplifies our life. We give feedback. And while we're grading, we keep up this pattern. We're just talking. We're like, oh, Blade, good job. Isla, you got a 4. Blade, you got a 4. Isla, you got a 4. Good job. Oh, Max, make sure you remember the parentheses. Blade, you forgot to, leave the term outside the parentheses. We'll just be talking, and they're engaged. They're fixing their answers. They're revising everything they're doing. We're regrading. Like at no point are we ever just like quiet. We just let the class go, and we don't proceed until every single student has answered the question and gotten some sort of grade from us. There are two things that are important. One is, after students are done, we have a bunch of practice cards. We leave those on so early finishers can get started, early. That's very important. Otherwise, they get squirrely. The other thing is, if students do not respond, we will actually sit and say, okay, in 1 minute, there are a few people who haven't responded in 1 minute. We're going to, call you guys out by name. So please finish in a minute. And then usually we see a few more responses go up. And then we'll be like, okay, Osai, okay, Max, you got 2 more minutes, and then we'll put up a timer for 2 minutes. If they don't respond in those 2 minutes, then we move on. But we really, really try to make sure everyone gets this before we move on. Otherwise, gaps develop in the class, and that's bad. You guys know that. So they do that. Everyone participates. And now we've got our practice questions. So we call these our blue cards. Oh, we take our break. Sorry, we take our 10-minute break. That's enough for 40 minutes. Now we take our 10-minute break. When they come back, they do their practice. So this is usually 12 to 14 questions, including with additionally 3 bonus questions. And you can see they're in increasing order of difficulty. The early questions, our goal is 100% of them get it correct. That's our benchmark, okay? Like factor this number out. The last non-bonus question, we expect 50% to get it correct. If 50% are getting it correct, it's too hard. If more than 50% getting it correct, it's probably too easy. And then the bonus questions, only the top students really do. Differentiation for gifted students is really easy. There's only one way to do it. You never have them teach other kids. You never have them, make questions for other kids. They hate that. The only thing you can do for gifted students is give them extra challenging questions. Then they're fully occupied and very happy. So we have those for the gifted kids. I want to point out, during this practice period, the students are asking a ton of questions. Like every tick mark here is a question that the students have asked. I want to point out that if we were doing this normally, asynchronously, all these questions would either go unanswered, resulting in less learning, or the parents would take up the burden, and they would be not happy about this. They would be like, I don't remember how to factor. Are you kidding me? Do I have to do all this work now? Am I the teacher? Should I get paid for being a teacher? They're not happy when they have to answer these questions, but we're the ones answering these questions so we can get a real sense of how the class is going. And here's what it looks like. I've got another video to show you guys. This is our grade book. This is everything happening within a 90-minute period. You can see them doing the my turns and your turns, and then you can see them completing all the practice questions. And this is happening over 90 minutes. Boom, 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 boom. You can see the top students, you can see the bottom students, but everyone is participating, except Diego. He went to, I think, Disneyland or Mammoth Mountain or something that day. And he was trying to do it from the car, but then he stopped. But everyone else is participating. Everyone else is engaged. There's no hiding out in our class. Okay. So then we go to recess. Okay, we go to recess for 30 minutes. They come back, they're rested. Now we have intervention time for 40 minutes. Intervention time is simple. We do either math or ELA, depending on which ones we feel there's a bigger gap that's developed. And then we do small group instruction with our so-called penguins, the lowest students. And other students work in pairs. So we just make like 9 breakout rooms and we put them in pairs. They work together the higher one teaches the lower one. And then the really bottom ones we put into separate breakout rooms, then we work with them in small groups. I also forgot to mention as our RTI, during practice time, during the independent work time, this is very important. Okay, if you have like a teacher and like a TA or 2 TAs, this can work so well. If you start to see all these hands being raised during independent work time, we just split it 50-50. Like Zoom has a really one button way to do this. You can put like half the kids in one breakout room, half the kids in the other, and the teacher takes one, the TA takes the other, and you just answer all the questions then. If there aren't as many questions, we create what we call a penguin habitat. It's kind of a cute name. What this is, it's a separate breakout room, and we monitor the gradebook. If we see that there are students that are only doing a couple questions or are being really slow, we just pull them into that breakout room. It's like, hey, what am I doing here? And you're like, you know what you're doing here. And then we work with them to get through the first few questions to make sure they know how to do it. After that, they're usually able to go through and do the rest of the questions. So it's super easy to do remote. Like in person, you would have to like rearrange desks, pull students. It would be a big logistical thing. With Zoom, you just click, 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 and they're in the penguin habitat. And then you click, 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 and they're back with the rest of the class. So differentiation is actually much easier remotely. And we do that. We do a lot of RTI. We do a lot of intervention and differentiation just because we need to. We need to engage kids. Okay. Then we do ELA. ELA. So we did algebra for math because we wanted to tackle something challenging. And for ELA, we wanted to tackle writing. Writing is something we feel is not addressed enough in elementary education often. It's sort of something that you're supposed to get as you go along. But in practice, we feel students need explicit instruction in how to write well. Otherwise, they don't. In fact, 75% of students, are considered below proficient. This cuts across all schools, all socioeconomic categories. So students need help with writing. We use a knowledge-rich curriculum. You know, one common consensus among writing experts is that students need something to write about, something substantial, not just like their summer vacation or their dog or something. They need to write about like serious things like science, history, literature, things that have a lot of content. So we make sure we teach that. And we also, took the advice of the writing expert Hochman, who believes that writing education in elementary school goes too fast. They try to get students writing paragraphs and essays way too soon before they can even construct really solid sentences. So this summer we focused on getting students able to write a really, really solid sentence. Breaking it down what's the fragment, what's a run-on sentence, how to make them minimal units, how to join them with conjunctions, coordinating, subordinating, how to expand sentences using a lot of different words. We got them so focused on that, and that was our writing instruction. But first, our content. We did a lot of science and history instruction. Here we focused less on having students like write things in skies because they've been doing that all morning. And we just had them focus on like listening to read alouds and engaging in live discussion with us. We did a lot of cold calling. So we'd present the card and we'd be like, summarize, cold call, what did you think? They respond. And we had a lot of interactive discussions. For discussion prompts, we would always try to cold call a few students first and then address kids who have their hands raised. That makes sure that no one's hiding out from us, like disengaging and feeling like they can just play a video game while we're doing this part of it. So here's an example. Whenever we start content, we always start with some prior knowledge piece where we try to reduce it to a level that's really fun for elementary students. So here's an example.
You're excited to be working at Bumble's company. You pick flowers all day and bundle them up for bees. However, you start to dislike your job. When you take your flowers to be weighed, Bumble always eats some of them, so you get paid less. Every time you drop a flower, Pixel makes a growling sound and bites you. The last straw is opening the envelope containing your pay. Instead of a check, you find it is full of pollen instead. Bumble insists that it's just as good as money.
So Bumble's kind of our mascot. He's a stuffed bee. So we pose a question to the students like, you're upset about the bad working conditions. What do you do? Do you work harder? Do you quit? And this leads to a really fun discussion about like other options besides working harder or quitting. And I'm going to show you a snippet of the discussion that ensued. Okay, you're up.
There's a lot of.
Okay, so I would do a riot. I would grab all the people from the work who will like agree with me, like they agree that the price is too low, and we would go around the street and we would like riot with everybody until Bumble agrees.
I don't like the sound of that. Maybe you should consider not doing that instead.
And Maya says she'll protest. We got some.
Okay, we got some rioters and protesters. I see you guys are becoming labor activists.
Okay.
Next.
Logan, then Duncan, Danya, then
Just give me one person at a time. Logan, okay, who's next? I'm sorry, I muted you.
I would try to compromise with the boss and tell him some ideas to have us work better if we're gonna work here.
Ooh, I like ideas. Will these ideas cost me money?
No.
Oh, okay. What are the ideas?
Money.
Yeah, I don't like those ideas. I only like the ones that involve you guys working harder for less money.
Okay. So Duncan.
Duncan?
I would probably go on strike, or I would pick all the flowers and then throw them in the trash can.
These ideas you're talking about, I don't like them. I don't like those ideas. But maybe you should try like not doing that. Okay.
Last one, then we have to go. Danya?
Danya.
Okay, so I would either protest, but only after I ask Bumble if I can get actual money. Doesn't have to be much actual money, just actual money, please. Or if that doesn't work, it also depends. The results can vary depending on who the company is, how they treat their workers, and also how much money the company has. So, if that doesn't work, then I'm just gonna go protest.
Bumble's like, I want to be humble, but I actually have a ton of money. Ever since I started paying you guys in Pollen, I've actually gotten richer. See, look at my fat bee legs. Okay. Anyway, so we have a good time, right? Like, this is like instruction. This is real instruction. The students are having a good time. They're learning about everything. And then we get into the serious content about organized labor, about unions, about Cesar Chavez, about the grape strike, about the rise and fall of the union, about Ronald Reagan, about all the things that happen. And because they're into it now, they're invested emotionally into the idea of like, what you can do if you're, working under these conditions, they get really into the discussion. We're cold calling them, but for every student we cold call, there's like 3 of them that really, really want to talk about it. And so we just do this for 40 minutes, lunch, and then another 40 minutes. And now that they have all this content really fresh in their mind, we go on to writing. And this is the same thing as math, the same approach. It's scaffolded. It's like, combine 2 sentences, using the conjunction because. So at first it's like employees have the right to form unions because Congress passed the NLRA. We have something like now they have to combine it using but they have to change the pronoun. So they can't use the word National Guard twice. When work ceased on the railroads, National Guard was called in to stop the strike, but they caused further chaos when they killed 10 people. Often students don't know how to use pronouns. They don't know what a pronoun is. So we teach them explicitly and suddenly they use pronouns. Amazing. Now they actually have to choose which conjunction's appropriate. We realize most of the students only know one conjunction. And. They don't use but, they don't use because, they don't use although, they don't use however. They use and for everything, even when they're not supposed to. So now they actually know how to connect sentences properly. And then finally, they got to write one of their own using the right conjunctions and by scaffolding it, by having them do explicit practice. And most importantly, by giving actual feedback at every step, they get really good at writing. So here you can see in 90 minutes, they're submitting cards. You can see Danya, she raced ahead and she just submitted everything. And then you can see all these cards that were being submitted over 90 minutes. And we're grading each one. Bloop, 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 grade, 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 grade. And because, each one's just a sentence, we can grade pretty fast. Usually we split up. One of us does grading, one of us does questions. And then I'll show you guys one more thing. This is actual work students are submitting. They're writing sentences. You know, they're writing, and we're grading. They're getting immediate feedback, and they're getting better at their writing. This isn't this thing where they write like, you know, a page-long essay, and then a week later you give them a bunch of edits on it, and then a week later they do nothing on it, and they never get better, and you're always fixing the same mistakes over and over and over again. This is a situation where every class we're seeing improvement. Next class, suddenly everyone's using pronouns. Next class, everyone's using conjunctions. Next class, everyone's writing complex sentences. We're like, this is amazing. If instead of 18 days, we had 18 weeks, like think of how far this could go. So anyway, we see significant academic growth with remote learning. In the 2-3 level, they all know how to manipulate expressions. They know how to factor things. They know how to move things around. They know what the distributive principle is. About half of them can solve simple equations. And at the 4-5 level, it's even more remarkable. We had several students we felt like were able to perform at a 9th grade level in math, in algebra, being able to do that level of math. And I think even our lowest students probably progressed at least a grade level in terms of being able to do like expressions. And they're all able to write complex sentences. Well, maybe all but 3. 3 of them kind of goofed around a little bit much during ELA time. So here's some examples. Let me switch to my iPad for this one. Oh yeah, like when we talk to you guys more in detail, we'll show you all these tricks for using like iPads and technology and things like that with Zoom. It works great. So yeah, like pretty much 14 out of our 19 students can solve a word problem like this. They can write down an equation. Every 5 flowers, about another 5 flowers, and they have 30 flowers. Like all the students can figure out how to write 5x plus 5 is equal to 30. And all 14 students can actually solve the equation. And then, you know, the really gifted ones, like the 6 or so at the top of their class, they could do even really hard problems. Like these are 4th graders, 5th graders, but they're able to like, you know, like solve problems like this. Like we hear all this talk about how like algebra is not developmentally appropriate for like elementary students. It's wrong. Like math is a language. If you learn the language early, you're fluent. That's it. And then you're never going to fear math again. We told these kids like when they get their PhDs, they owe us money. And then things like complex sentences. Like they're able to take simple sentences like, you know, about he started the New Deal, and then they're able to turn them into more complex sentences with all the conjunctions and the prepositional phrases and all that stuff. We don't go into all the grammar. They don't know that's what they're doing, but they're able to write substantially more complex sentences than they were when they started. Okay. So let me discuss some things that are hard and some things that are easy about remote learning, because not everything was like, you know, daisies and whatever some other flower is. Some things that were hard. Okay. Debugging tech issues is really hard remotely. Because in a classroom, you know how many like, oh, my iPad ran out of battery, oh, I can't plug, I can't do this, I can't log in, my Wi-Fi doesn't work. All that's already such a pain to solve, even when you're going around physically present. Like when every student is at home and you can't see the screen, it's kind of a nightmare to solve. So we found it to be super, super important to have a week of just onboarding. Even before S3 started, we made like sort of a smart start like lesson where students were able to go in and post things, and then we were able to follow up with parents who were having tech issues. So just onboarding them like in advance helped us, because we told them we have no way to debug tech issues during class. It's not fair to the other students. We can't do that. Digital distraction. Like in the classroom, like you kind of have a captive audience. Like they're all there, they have to be there. If they're not participating, there are things you can do. If they're at home, they can turn on the virtual background, and like their entertainment is merely like, you know, 1 foot away. They can open up a tab, they can do YouTube, they can play their Switch under their desk. There's so many different things they can do that so we were super amped up about like, we need to do intervention, we need to do RTI, we need to like do small groups, we need differentiation, just because we never wanted the student to feel like they were lost or disengaged. That was our solution. And we texted parents regularly. If students weren't coming back from break, you know, within 2 minutes, they get a text. If they weren't completing their cards, they get a text at the end of the day. We made sure we kept up with the parents so that it never got to the point where students were just like not participating or drifting away. This is even more important to do in a remote context because students have other options and they will use them if they don't feel like they're getting any attention. It's hard to do the thing where you're talking and you're hearing from all the class at the same time. Like sometimes you just get this buzz, right? You're teaching, and then people are calling out answers and you're like, yeah, I got this, they got this. I'm a great teacher. But this turns out to be a mixed blessing because sometimes having the top students calling out all the answers all the time will give you the wrong impression that like everyone gets it when in fact they don't. So we actually found this to be a blessing after a while that we weren't able to hear from like the top students all the time. And finally, lesson planning. Lesson planning, like planning just took a lot of time. Like I won't lie, I won't say anything, like it just requires time. And hopefully your district, your administration is giving you guys plenty of time to plan lessons because every hour that we put in lesson planning saved us like multiple hours of like wrangling penguins into the habitat and trying to like reduce the gap and things like that. Good lessons just solve so many problems and time is needed to plan those.
Sorry, Julius, I'm just going to let people know that in a few minutes, we will be making the announcements about starting the other track.
Okay, cool. Thank you. But here's the silver lining. Here are some really good things we found about remote teaching. The first is classroom management is a lot easier. And I speak as someone who's like, I'm not an elementary teacher. I've sat in, I've helped teach elementary. I've led some elementary classes. And at least for me, I don't have a loud voice. Like classroom management for me has always been a nightmare. I'm always getting like drowned out. I'm always having the ding, 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 ding. Okay, everyone just give me 2 minutes. Ding, 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 ding. Like I can't get anyone's attention like ever. Like teachers always feel sorry for me and it's like, okay, class, gotta be quiet so you can listen to Mr. Su talk here. Oh, remote teaching is so wonderful because like you can unmute people. It's like you have complete control over the audio environment of the classroom. The only kids who want to talk are the ones you want to talk. If some kids like, I sat in the class where like no instruction could happen for 40 minutes because like one student like ate all the chicken biscuits and one student did not get a chicken biscuit. And she like would not let anyone like learn anything for an hour. Like that just doesn't happen in remote instruction because you just mute them. So we have complete control. It's great. A lot of the medium to high students report that they can focus much more easily because, you know, there's not so much chatter. They're not getting bullied. They're not fighting. You know, there's minimal distraction. Differentiation. Differentiation is a lot easier because you can like just put students in the breakout rooms. It's like having a giant like claw and like just being able to position kids in the groups. Like that just works out. You can drag students into the penguin habitat. Like that, it's just in the 50-50 thing. Like imagine what you'd have to do logistically. You'd have to have like 2 separate rooms to split kids in half, answer questions from each half. Here, it's soundproof. It just works. You just split and that works. And working with co-teachers, working with paraprofessionals, TAs, like everyone can just divvy up. Like it works so smoothly. If you have like a resource teacher come in, if you have a special ed, you have an IEP, like all these things work actually really well remote teaching wise. That logistically would be hard to do in the classroom. And this all goes down to having complete control of the auditory environment. I won't go through all these. Parents really liked it. They said this was like all-day synchronous was infinitely better than whatever they got in March. They felt like they could just go back and work and not have to worry about their kids. They were immensely grateful that we took all this off their hands. And they even found that it compared well to in-person school. They're like, okay, there's no substitute for in-person school. The minute it's safe to do so, we want our kids in in-person school. But before that happens, this is a 100% viable substitute and we will not complain. We love this. This is what we want. And here's like 1 million emails that we're gonna send now to make sure our kids get the same thing at their schools. And they started doing that. They started reaching out to their principals and their admins. And finally, I just wanna play a video. This is the last 30 seconds of S3. These are the kids that wanted to stay behind. They didn't want to leave class. They didn't want the day to end. They didn't want the course to be over. They knew they weren't going to see us again. They were very sad. And I'm just going to go ahead and play this now.
Can I meant it by I'm gonna stay here until like you guys are with me. So
Yeah, we're gonna have to close. But yeah, okay, bye.
Bye. Okay.
bye.
Have a good rest of the summer.
I'm gonna miss you guys.
Yeah, I'm gonna miss you guys too, okay? Great job.
Okay, Blake, hope you took a picture of that number. It's closing in 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, bye. Yeah.
And I meant it by I'm gonna stay here until like you
Oops.
guys are with me. So
Yeah, we're gonna have to close.
Okay. Yeah, so that was the last 15 seconds of class. So these are real, right? I mean, this is real teaching. These are real relationships we're building. People who say you can't build relationships on your remote context, you absolutely can. I know many of you guys are worried that you're not going to get a good connection with your students this year. This is going to be the year you don't know your students. You absolutely are going to be able to know your students remotely. You absolutely are going to build those connections and those relationships. They're going to know each other. They're going to miss you when they finish the year. Okay, I can guarantee that 100%. So some summaries. To be effective, this is what we found useful. Definitely go beyond the 90 minutes. I don't care what UTLA comes up with or what the negotiation is. Like, if they're like the minimum is 90 minutes, don't do 90 minutes, okay? Like, it's just gonna create problems. You're gonna end up with a gap this big and you're gonna have a flock of penguins. Like, they're not gonna learn anything. Your parents are gonna like be complaining all the time. Just do more instruction. Like, once you have everyone in a room for once you have everyone doing daily live instruction, it doesn't take any more effort just to go a bit longer. Just go longer. It's really gonna help your students. Chunk your content, put them in small pieces, helps with grading, helps with feedback, helps with everything. If they're submitting work, it should be getting graded quickly. That really helps. Cold calling is invaluable for keeping everyone on their toes. And then finally, intervention. Intervention is very helpful. Okay, so I'm gonna give just a second. Okay. I'm in my last 5 minutes. Okay, so there's some new features we want to show off. So we built Zoom in disguise. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up now.
And for the first presenters, don't worry because we have
Sorry. So yeah, we built Zoom in disguise. I'm going to ask you guys to start your video. And so yeah, this was something that like a lot of students, like sometimes they needed 2 devices. Sometimes it was inconvenient to like, you know, switch things back and forth all the time. And so we figured out how to put video chat directly in the sky. So we have our own system now. It's got all the same features. We can mute and unmute kids. We can share our screen. If you guys raise your hands, can you guys all raise your hands? It actually shows you the order in which hands are being raised. Oh, yeah. And so you can be like, okay, I'm going to call number 1, then number 2, then number 3, then number 4. In this Zoom room. I can share my screen and everyone can see each other's screens, which is super convenient. But the most important thing we fixed was the breakout rooms. Breakout rooms in Zoom are terrible. Like, you can't supervise kids in breakout rooms. You have to hop in between, right? So we replaced breakout rooms with tables. I can create table 1. I can create table 1. I'm going to call it red. I can create table 2. I'm going to call it green. I'm going to create table 3. I'm going to call it blue. And like a giant claw, I can go ahead and assign kids to rooms. I mean, tables. And when I do this, I'm going to put all your hands down. Like, I can actually see all of them at the same time. I can be supervising everyone simultaneously. And furthermore, I can make it so that they can talk to each other while I'm talking and I won't hear them. They can be chatting. They can be like interacting. They can be like a regular class where they're just like chatting to each other and collaborating while I'm talking. It doesn't interfere. Of course, I can listen in on them. I can press this listen button and I can hear what they're doing so no one's going off topic or off task. but they can see me. I can see them. I can't hear them, so their conversations don't interrupt anyone else. This is way better than a regular classroom, guys. And if I want to call on someone, I can just bring them to the front of the class, and then everyone can hear them. And then I can, hello, yep. And then I can return them back to their table, just like that. Or if I want to visit a table and I just want to talk to the people at the table, I can click visit. And suddenly I'm going to be like visiting the table. Hey, Melanie, hey, Pete.
Hi.
Yay, great. And then I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to the front of the class. And so again, this is like super flexible. We have these tables set up, and it's just going to make teaching in a remote setting so much easier. And we have a video we're going to release on how to do it. I'm sorry I went over time, but I just wanted you guys to know this is available now, today, to all licensed teachers. You guys will have this Zoom feature in your skies on the web. iPad users, I'm sorry. We're a bit busy with summer school, so it's going to have to wait another 2 weeks while we start working on implementing iOS.